It was just another quiet evening at home until the phone call came and turned our world upside down. Marcus and I were sitting at the dinner table, enjoying the salmon and roasted potatoes I'd made, when his cell phone started buzzing. He glanced at the screen and froze. "Who is it?" I asked. "It's Selena," he said grimly. Selena, his 19-year-old daughter from his disastrous first marriage who he hadn't spoken to in years. My heart sank. Nothing good could come of this. Marcus answered the call and I studied his face as he listened, his eyes narrowing in concern. After a few terse words, he hung up and let out a long sigh. "What did she want?" I asked, bracing myself. "She's coming to live with us. Her roommate kicked her out, so she's driving here tomorrow." I dropped my fork, my appetite vanishing. Here? For how long? She didn't say, but it sounded like she plans to stay indefinitely. I felt the panic rising in my chest. We'd worked so hard to build a good life, a stable home. Marcus and I both came from broken families, rife with lies and betrayals. It had taken years of therapy and trust building to heal those wounds. The last thing we needed was a destructive, entitled 19-year-old tearing open those scars again. "Can't her mother take her in?" I asked. Marcus shook his head. "You know how that went. The divorce was nuclear. They haven't spoken since." Before I could object further, we heard the front door open. Our 16-year-old son Eli walked in, home from basketball practice. He joined us at the table, his wavy brown hair damp with sweat. "Hey, Mom, Dad, what's going on?" he asked, detecting the tension immediately. He was an exceptionally perceptive kid. Marcus gave him a tired smile. "We just got a call from your sister Selena. She's going to be staying with us for a while." Eli's eyes widened in surprise. He knew little about Selena, other than the few bitter stories Marcus had told over the years. Okay, Eli said slowly. "How long is she staying?" "We don't know yet," Marcus admitted. An uneasy silence settled on the room. I could imagine the worried thoughts spinning through Eli's mind. Selena's sudden arrival would disrupt the stability he valued so deeply, but he was too kind-hearted to voice those concerns. I reached over and gave his hand a reassuring squeeze. Then I turned to Marcus, my eyes flashing with determination. "We need to set firm ground rules," I said. "No freeloading or taking advantage. If she wants to stay here, she needs to get a job and contribute." Marcus nodded. "You're right. I'll make that clear when she arrives." But as we cleaned up the remains of dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that nothing good would come from Selena's return. The past has a way of catching up, even if you barricade the door. The next morning I woke up feeling uneasy. Today was the day Selena would arrive. Marcus had cleared out the small guest room for her, but I doubted she'd be happy with the cramped space. Over breakfast, Marcus tried reassuring Eli. "Don't worry, I'm sure Selena has grown up a lot since I last saw her. Just try to make her feel welcome." Eli nodded, but I could tell he was dreading her arrival as much as I was. Around noon, we heard a car pull up outside. "That must be her," Marcus said. My heart pounded as we went to the front door. A blonde girl stepped out of a beat-up hatchback jammed with clothes and boxes. She looked nothing like the sullen, scrawny 13-year-old I remembered from the divorce hearings years ago. She'd grown tall and pretty, wearing stylish clothes and expertly applied makeup. But her bright smile didn't reach her eyes. Marcus hugged her awkwardly. "Welcome home, Selena." "Thanks, Daddy," she said sweetly, though she'd made no effort to contact him since the divorce. "It's so good to see you again." Over the next hour, Selena carried in her boxes and bags, piling them in the small guest room despite the lack of space. She rejected Marcus's offers to help, barking at him not to touch her things. So much for her growing up, I thought. At dinner, Selena dominated the conversation, chatting about herself and sprinkling in subtle insults toward me. "I can't believe you're still working as a nurse, Lena. Wouldn't you rather do something more interesting?" I bit my tongue. Nursing was my passion, but Selena clearly looked down on it. When Eli talked about applying for college scholarships, Selena laughed sharply. "Good luck getting enough money to attend a decent school." Eli's face burned. I knew how hard he'd worked for those scholarships, maintaining straight A's while excelling at sports. After dinner, I pulled Marcus aside. "We need to set ground rules for Selena," I urged. "No more of this entitled behavior." He sighed. "You're right, I'll talk to her." But over the next few days, nothing changed. Selena continued acting rudely, while doing nothing to get a job or help around the house. My patience wore dangerously thin. Then came the final straw. I arrived home from work one evening to find Selena gone and Eli sitting alone, his face pale. "What's wrong?" I asked. "She stole my laptop, and my money jar was empty." His lower lip trembled. "There was over $500 in there from my job." Rage boiled inside me. That money represented years of Eli's hard work and sacrifice. When Selena finally swanned in, I confronted her. "Give back Eli's money and his laptop now." She smirked. "Or what? You'll kick me out." I wanted to slap that smug look off her face. But violence wouldn't solve anything. Selena was toxic, destroying all she touched. I had to protect my family from her, even if it meant driving away Marcus's daughter for good. I decided right then and there. Selena had to go. Her toxic behavior was destroying our family, and I refused to let that continue. When Marcus came home, I told him what Selena had done. She stole from her own brother after we opened our home to her. "I want her out, Marcus. Today." He looked pained. "I know Selena's behavior is unacceptable, but she's still my daughter. If we kick her out now, she'll have nowhere to go." "So we just let her keep stealing from us?" I cried. "She's manipulating you. Can't you see that?" "Give me a little more time to work things out with her," Marcus pleaded. "With some boundaries, I think Selena can change." I shook my head in frustration. Marcus's parental guilt was blinding him to Selena's true nature. But I had to pick my battles carefully to avoid damaging my marriage. "1 week," I said. "If her behavior doesn't improve drastically in 1 week, she has to leave." Marcus agreed reluctantly. I only hoped we could limit the damage Selena inflicted before then. But over the next few days, things only got worse. Selena stayed out partying all night, then slept past noon. She helped herself to my jewelry, claimed they were just loans. When I demanded she get a job, she scoffed. "Why work when Daddy lets me stay here for free?" One night, I came home to find her smoking on the couch. When I yelled at her to take it outside, she blew smoke in my face. "You're not my mother. Don't tell me what to do." I felt sick, realizing the extent of Selena's manipulation. She knew exactly how to provoke me while acting sweetly innocent around Marcus. The final straw came when I received a call from my credit card company, asking about a suspicious purchase. Over $2,000 at a luxury clothing store in LA. It didn't take a genius to realize Selena had stolen my card. She'd racked up more debt in a week than Eli and I spent on food in a month. When Marcus came home, I confronted him, shaking with rage. "Your daughter is destroying us. I want her out of this house tonight." Marcus's face was haggard. "You're right." I wanted to believe Selena could change, but clearly she's out of control. "It's me or her, Marcus," I said quietly. "Choose carefully." He pulled me into a hug. "You and Eli will always come first. I just pray we can get through this without tearing our family apart." We sat down with Selena, and Marcus told her she had to move out immediately. She flew into a rage, hurling insults and accusations. I stayed silent, letting Marcus handle his deranged daughter. When Selena stomped off to pack her things, Marcus put his head in his hands. "I'm so sorry I brought this madness into our home," he said. "You and Eli mean everything to me. However long it takes, I promise we'll recover from Selena's poison." I squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his words. With unity, we would survive this trial. Selena's twisted schemes could not break our family. The weeks after kicking out Selena were tense. Marcus tried calling her several times, but she refused to speak with him. I knew he was torn up with guilt, blaming himself for how she'd turned out. I tried reassuring him we'd done the right thing. Selena was like a tornado, destroying all in her path. We changed the locks and canceled my stolen credit card. The bank's fraud department was understanding, agreeing to waive the bogus charges. Slowly, our lives regained a sense of normalcy. Then the letter came, shattering that fragile peace all over again. It was from a bank I'd never heard of, thanking me for opening a new credit account. My breath caught in my throat as I read the attached paperwork. Someone had applied for a personal loan in my name, forging my signature on the forms. $15,000 already deposited into an unknown account. My hands shook with anger and panic. That amount of debt could devastate our family, and there was only one person who would stoop so low. When Marcus came home, I thrust the letter at him. "Your daughter is trying to destroy us. We need to call the police." His eyes widened in shock as he read the letter. My God, I know Selena has issues, but outright identity theft? He slumped at the table, head in his hands. This is all my fault. I failed her as a father. My anger thawed slightly. As much as Selena infuriated me, I knew this betrayal devastated Marcus even more. I sat down beside him. You did your best with her under terrible circumstances. Some people just refuse to change. But now we need to focus on protecting ourselves and Eli. Will you call the police to report the fraud? Marcus sighed heavily, but nodded. You're right. I need to do the responsible thing, no matter how painful. We spent an agonizing hour on the phone with the police and bank, filing reports about Selena's crime. It still boggled my mind that the smiling little girl I remembered from Marcus's wedding photos could grow into this heartless criminal. The bank investigator informed us the loan had been taken out locally, meaning Selena was still lurking nearby. The thought made my skin crawl. That night, as we lay in bed, I turned to Marcus. We'll get that loan invalidated. The bank believes we're the victims here. I hope you're right, he said, because if not, this could financially devastate us. We could even lose the house. The unspoken fear hung heavy between us. Selena wasn't content just poisoning her father's memory of her. She aimed to completely destroy his new family, no matter the cost. As I finally drifted off to sleep, I repeated a silent mantra. Selena's scheming couldn't touch us, no matter how hard she tried. Goodness and truth would prevail. But in my heart, I harbored a cold anger I'd never felt before. If Selena continued threatening my loved ones, I would stop at nothing to take her down. Over the next few weeks, we heard nothing from Selena. The bank was investigating the fraudulent loan, buying us time before the debts came due. The police had tried visiting Selena's last known address, but she'd already vacated her apartment, leaving no trace. Marcus spent hours scouring online records, trying to find where Selena had disappeared to, but it seemed she knew how to avoid being caught. A true con artist. Then on a sunny Saturday, everything changed again. Marcus was at a weekend teaching conference, so Eli and I decided to see a movie together. But when we returned home, I instantly sensed something was wrong. The front door was ajar. My pulse pounded as I rushed inside. Eli close behind. Wait in the hall, I told him. If Selena was lurking inside, I didn't want Eli getting hurt. I crept forward, peering into the darkened rooms. At first, nothing seemed disturbed. Then I reached Eli's bedroom. The entire room had been ransacked. Dresser drawers flung open, mattress upended, closet ransacked. Eli rushed in behind me, crying out in shock. That's when I saw the paper on his bed, scrawled with a taunting message, "College fund gone. Oops, better start bussing tables, loser brother." Red spots swam before my eyes. The college fund Marcus and I had painstakingly built for Eli, untouched until now nearly $20,000 for his future, was gone. Stolen by Selena to fund her extravagant tastes, while she left crude insults for the brother she'd never bothered to know. I heard a strangled sob behind me. Eli's face was white, eyes glittering with tears. All that money you saved for me, gone. I wrapped my arms around my kind, diligent son, so undeserving of this cruelty. We'll figure this out, I promised. But inside, my blood boiled. That money was meant to give Eli a chance at a better life. And Selena had snatched that dream away without a second thought. When Marcus arrived, he broke down at the violation of our home and Eli's loss. I rarely saw my soft-spoken husband enraged, but today his fury mirrored my own. Our savings drained, our locks picked, our son senselessly tormented. Enough was enough. Selena had to face consequences before she destroyed more innocent lives. The next evening, ignoring Marcus's warnings, I drove to the rundown motel where Selena was rumored to be staying. Sure enough, I spotted her beat-up hatchback out front. I banged on her door until she finally opened it, smirking when she saw me. Well, if it isn't St. Lena, come to preach about morality? I slapped her across the face. You absolute monster, I spat. Wasn't ruining our lives once enough for you? Selena's grin vanished. You'll regret that, Butch, she hissed, lunging toward me. We scuffled briefly before I shoved her back inside, slamming the door in her contorted face. I strode away, trembling but resolute. One way or another, Selena's reign of terror ended today. I had given her every chance to change. But some people rotted from the inside out, beyond hope of redemption. Dragging them from the darkness risked them pulling you down into their depths. Selena had proven herself a soulless parasite, incapable of goodness. Now it was time to excise her from our lives for good, before her fangs struck again. In the weeks after my confrontation with Selena, I waited on edge for her retaliation. Marcus increased security around our home. I pulled Eli from school, not wanting him alone until Selena was apprehended. But as days passed with no sign of her, we began to breathe easier. Maybe she had realized her crimes would catch up with her if she stayed in town. Then, late one night, I awoke to blaring fire alarms. Marcus and I rushed to Eli's room and found it filled with smoke, flames licking up one wall. We grabbed Eli and raced outside, moments before the fire engulfed his bedroom. As firefighters extinguished the blaze, suspicion gnawed at me. This was no electrical mishap. Selena had made her final, desperate play for revenge. The police investigation confirmed my fears. Traces of gasoline had been splashed along one side of the house and ignited. A disturbing amount, enough to incinerate us as we slept if the timing had been slightly off. Marcus's face was haggard as he spoke to the investigators. My daughter Selena Rogers is your arson suspect. We have evidence she committed identity theft and burglary against us. This fire was her latest attempt to harm my family. With the troubling revelations about Selena's escalating crimes, the police finally took serious action. They obtained security footage from nearby cameras, showing a figure in Selena's car fleeing the neighborhood right before firefighters arrived. Arrest warrants were issued. Selena's name and photo were distributed to local media, labeling her an armed and dangerous fugitive. Marcus even made a direct plea for Selena to turn herself in, promising she'd still receive due process. But Selena remained in hiding, our lives frozen in limbo as we waited for the snake to strike again. I stayed locked indoors with Eli, rifles and fire extinguishers within reach. She'd taken so much from us already. I refused to let her steal our sanity, too. Then late one evening, I got an unexpected call from the lead detective on our case, his voice urgent. You need to check the news right away. Selena Rogers was just apprehended. I grabbed Marcus and Eli, and we turned on the TV with trembling hands. A breaking news report showed Selena in handcuffs outside a pawn shop, stolen jewelry and electronics scattered at her feet. The very items she'd looted from our home. She cursed and spat at reporters as police stuffed her in a squad car. Selena had grown so convinced of her own invincibility that she'd slipped up and gotten caught red-handed. As the reporters recounted Selena's shocking crimes against her own family, her reputation lay in tatters, the real monster exposed underneath the pretty surface. I almost pitied her. Almost. That night, with Selena in a cell and our home protected, we finally slept in peace. The next weeks would be difficult, untangling the wreckage Selena left behind. But the storm had passed. Her lies could haunt us no more. A new dawn had broken, full of promise and hope. In the weeks after Selena's arrest, we slowly regained a sense of normalcy. With Selena locked up on multiple felony charges, the dark cloud that had choked our home finally lifted. I took Eli out for belated birthday celebrations at his favorite restaurants. Marcus and I spent evenings reminiscing about happier times before Selena's arrival. We started making plans to repair the fire damage and replenish our drained finances. There were still court dates looming. Marcus agonized over having to testify against his eldest daughter, no matter how estranged they'd become. I tried to steel my heart, reminding myself of all the suffering Selena had inflicted. Then we received shocking news. While in jail awaiting her trial, Selena had gotten into a violent fight with another inmate. The details were murky, but the results were clear. Selena was dead. Marcus took the news hardest of all. He locked himself in our room for days, torn apart with guilt. I focused my energy on comforting Eli, who despite everything felt saddened at the loss of a sister he'd never known. In the weeks that followed, we learned more disturbing details about Selena's final days. The inmate she'd clashed with claimed Selena had bragged about the rush she got from deceiving people, saying she wished she'd stolen triple the amount from us. Hearing Selena's callous words helped harden my heart. She'd felt no remorse for destroying lives. In the end, her greed and aggression had collided with someone equally vicious. With Selena gone, the case against her unraveled quickly. The bank rescinded her bogus loan applications, removing that crushing debt burden. The police helped retrieve some of our stolen funds from her apartment and storage unit. At the same time, sympathies poured in from our community, people horrified at Selena's behavior once her crimes became public. Many had known Marcus and I as a loving couple and parents for over a decade. They rallied around us, raising money to help Eli pay his college tuition. Their generosity stunned me. After writhing in Selena's web of isolation and deceit, the support of true friends felt like waking up from a nightmare. I saw it dawn on Marcus, too. We were not alone. Good people could conquer evil together. On the anniversary of Selena's death, we visited her grave for the first and only time. Marcus knelt by the modest stone and whispered a prayer. I stood back with Eli, giving them space. She wasn't born bad, Eli said quietly. Do you think if she'd made different choices, she could have been happy? I hugged my wise son close. I think we all forge our own path. Selena chose destruction, but life marches on. Now we walk in the light again. Marcus joined us, finally looking at peace. He took my hand, a gentle smile on his face. Thank you for staying by my side, he said. Your love guided me out of the darkness. Together, we turned and walked into the sunset, leaving Selena's tempestuous ghost behind. The future awaited, bright and full of hope. In the months after Selena's death, our family slowly healed. The fire damage was repaired, stolen money recovered, debts settled. Bit by bit, we reclaimed what Selena had tried destroying. But some wounds aren't visible. I woke choking from nightmares of flames engulfing our home. Marcus withdrew into himself for days at a time, brooding with guilt, and Eli became quieter, jumping at small noises and keeping his bedroom door locked. So I suggested we start seeing a family counselor. At first, Marcus resisted, ashamed at needing help, but eventually he agreed it was necessary to fully mend our battered spirits. Our sessions proved intensely cathartic. We spoke of betrayal, violation, anger. The counselor taught us coping techniques for anxiety and PTSD. He urged us to vocalize our feelings rather than bottling them up, which had strained my relationship with the brooding Marcus. I discovered depths of pain in Marcus I'd never realized. He admitted part of his desperation to help Selena stemmed from regret over his failures with her as a child during his divorce. The counselor eased his shame, reframing his efforts as misguided rather than malicious. For Eli, the greatest solace came from restoring normal routines. He rejoined school sports teams, volunteered at a homeless shelter, and took a part-time job at an ice cream parlor. Focusing on productivity and community engagement helped alleviate his sense of helplessness. 6 months later, with our counselor's approval, we decided to close the book on our tribulations with Selena. We used the last of her recovered stolen money to take a family trip to Hawaii, visiting breathtaking beaches and eating decadent dinners. No friction, no drama, just joyful quality time together. On the final night, Marcus and I renewed our vows on the beach under a sunset, Eli proudly officiating. I gazed lovingly at my two men, my champions. Selena had tried tearing us apart. Instead, we'd emerged stronger than ever. Not all scars fully disappear, but you can choose to wear them proudly, refusing to let past pain define you. Our family embodied that resilience. On the plane ride home, I penned a journal entry I later shared with Marcus and Eli. The past year contained agonizing trials, but also profound growth. We cling closer now, wounds healed into wisdom. Selena acted as a wicked knife, slicing open old injuries and inflicting new ones. But we three are the stitching, holding fast, binding up the cuts, making whole what was rent. Our imperfect family will not just survive, but thrive. The darkness recedes, healing dawns, and the light everlasting remains. Later that week, I tucked my journal away in a keepsake box. The final remnants of Selena's ruination, trial transcripts, bank statements, police reports, went into the trash for good. Marcus hugged me close. It's finally over, he said. Now we build something beautiful from the ashes. I smiled up at my husband, then pulled Eli into our embrace. The storm had passed, our lives stretched ahead, sunny and bright, and we would walk this new path arm in arm, faces tilted toward the light.
I'd officially transferred the ownership of our house to my parents, and were contemplating divorce. James, with a cold demeanor, pointed at me and callously insisted that I leave the house. He unleashed a stream of insults, supported by his parents' cheerful smiles, who seemed to silently endorse his actions. Nevertheless, I remained unfazed by their words, calmly accepting the decision to leave. Inside me, a well-thought-out plan accompanied the luggage I had prepared in advance. Hand in hand, I departed from the house without hesitation. They were oblivious to the gravity of the situation awaiting them. My name is Sally, just turned 50. Many years have passed since our marriage. Our children are now independent, leading lives away from us. I used to live the life of an ordinary salaried worker, but now, thanks to a friend's introduction, I spend my days as a teacher of handmade accessories, a hobby turned profession. This new job has become a turning point in my life, bringing fulfillment through interactions with my students and the joy of crafting every day. Some might have negative opinions about turning a hobby into a livelihood, but I am content. James and I met by chance at the company where I used to work. He was employed at a client company at the time, and as we started to meet often through work-related social gatherings, our relationship deepened. Eventually, we chose to marry out of love. After 3 years of marriage, our family was blessed with a healthy and energetic boy. He graduated from a well-known university and is now happily married, living a prosperous life. However, despite our son's success, the relationship between James and me became increasingly difficult to find joy in. Over the years, James underwent a transformation, displaying changes in behavior. The once gentle and considerate James became demanding, treating me like nothing more than a housemaid. His daily changing demands and preferences became a source of trouble for me. Lately, James has been easily angered, blaming me for trivial things, and instances of verbal abuse have been on the rise. I've been wanting to escape this life and start anew, but I'm tied down by an unpaid mortgage. Despite this, James quit his job without a clear reason and now spends his days lazing around the house. He hardly lifts a finger to help with daily chores, leaving me to manage everything on my own. The house we live in was recently rebuilt, and I funded it all. Managing the finances, I saved bit by bit for its reconstruction. It embodies my wishes and aspirations, a house I worked hard to build. I don't want it to fall into James's hands if I leave. Beyond the mortgage issue, this house symbolizes my dreams, with features like the spacious kitchen area reflecting my careful choices. Despite initial input from James on the house's design, I covered all the costs and wanted my wishes to be respected. Despite facing challenges, the house, with all its desired features, eventually became a reality, fulfilling our dream. I experienced a profound sense of joy about the reality of our new home. However, the cost of construction significantly surpassed our initial estimates, compelling us to take on a much larger loan than anticipated. Accepting such a substantial loan in our 50s was unexpected, but the prospect of the happiness our new home promised provided us with the energy to overcome this financial burden. On the flip side, James appeared somewhat sulky, as his opinions and wishes were not well reflected in the house design. He expressed discontent, considering it unnecessary and akin to throwing money down the drain. Ignoring his complaints and grumbles, I pressed on. Gradually, he stopped talking to me and began resorting to childish behaviors, such as scattering trash and leaving things disorganized to provoke irritation. I wondered when this situation, this life, would come to an end, pondering these thoughts every day. A few months had passed since we moved into the new house when suddenly the doorbell rang. We weren't expecting any visitors that day, leaving me curious about who it might be. As I prepared to go to the front door, James, surprisingly, got up and headed there before me, possibly aware of the visitor's identity. After a while, cheerful voices and laughter emanated from the entrance. When the door to the living room slowly opened, revealing the visitors, I saw the faces of my unexpected in-laws, Harold and Alice. Honestly, I always felt pressure in my relationship with them. When we first announced our marriage, they treated me coldly, criticized me for my lower social status, and maintained an awkward attitude even on our wedding day. Their interference continued post-marriage, and each time I interacted with them, I wondered how to handle the situation. Despite thinking there had been some change or settling down due to lack of contact, their sudden visit surprised me. Greeting them politely, I felt a slight tension, but they passed by me without a word, intentionally ignoring my presence and bumping into my shoulder. They marveled at the house, expressing envy at the spacious and user-friendly kitchen. James proudly showcased the house to his in-laws, and upon their return, the expressions on their faces seemed satisfied. However, James' expression turned stern, and he suddenly raised his voice in anger towards me, instructing me to hurry up and prepare tea and snacks. Overwhelmed by his words, I hastily prepared tea and served snacks, but his parents seemed dissatisfied, commenting on the hospitality. Despite my efforts, Harold expressed dissatisfaction, and as they quickly finished the snacks and tea, he commented appreciatively on the house's interior. James, with a broad smile, invited his parents to live together in the house, almost ignoring my presence. They listened to James's words and left, leaving me watching their retreating figures. I felt a significant gap between James and me, witnessing him chatting and laughing joyfully with his parents, something I hadn't seen in a long time. Subsequently, in response to James' invitation, his parents began visiting our house more frequently. Initially, it was a few times a month, but it gradually increased to several times a week, eventually becoming almost daily. However, their criticisms towards me never ceased, and James showed no signs of curbing them. James' attitude of blaming me, coupled with his parents' intensified disapproval, became more pronounced. His complaints about me not listening and causing our son suffering were relentless. Despite facing daily difficulties, I found myself unable to voice the frustration in my heart. All I could do was offer words of apology. The in-laws' visits increased beyond anticipation, and they started visiting even more frequently during my absence. They would come along with James, leaving clear evidence of their activities at home: scattered beer cans, empty bottles, and traces of spilled alcohol that seeped into our new rug. Despite my protests, the new house began to smell of alcohol and felt dirty. I couldn't understand why, despite not contributing to the household, James was quick to complain. His involvement in gambling added another layer of worry, as remnants of used betting slips surfaced regularly. Explaining the risks of gambling and its impact on our finances seemed futile. The losses were a significant blow, especially since the money used for gambling was hard-earned through my tireless work. Nearly a month into the frequent visits from the in-laws, they targeted the times when I was out. One day, returning home early, I found them leisurely spending time in our house. Surprised, I confronted them, but their snarky words and indifferent attitude made it clear that they considered my presence bothersome. Frustrated and stressed by the insolent attitudes of James and his parents, I realized I had reached my limit. Instead of succumbing to emotions, I decided it was time to devise a plan to address the situation. Amidst this turmoil, an unusual event occurred. During a time when I was supposed to be away, the in-laws visited unexpectedly, expressing surprise at their unusual timing. I sarcastically commented on their avoidance of my presence. Ignoring my remark, they boldly entered the house. James welcomed them with a smile, leading them to inspect various areas, from the kitchen to the bathroom. Observing their meticulous checks, I sensed a hidden agenda behind their actions. Even as they left, they wore satisfied expressions, as if they had confirmed something. Curious and wary, I questioned their inspections and wondered if there was something they should tell me. I had cautioned James not to worry, emphasizing that it was none of his business. His behavior, however, hinted at concealing something from me. I suspected he was trying to manipulate me cunningly, but grasping the real intention proved challenging. Observing the situation became my only option. Then, one day after work, I returned home to find a large moving truck parked in front of our house, bearing the logo of a company named Moving Center. James appeared to be in discussions with the truck driver and representatives. When our eyes met, he pretended not to see me and disappeared inside the house. What shocked me more was the simultaneous arrival of my in-laws. They greeted me casually, and James welcomed them, leading them into the house. The atmosphere felt tense, and as I followed them inside, I noticed a significant change. The familiar furniture and belongings I knew had vanished, replaced by my in-laws' dated furniture, arranged as if this were their home. As I sat down on the sofa, they surrounded me with smirky smiles, conveying a sense of smugness. Their behavior indicated a pre-planned action, and though anxious, I decided to quietly wait and see what would unfold. The somewhat hurried gazes of my in-laws added to the atmosphere. They declared that there was something they needed to tell me, hinting at a hidden agenda. Bracing myself, I responded with feigned calmness, and James sighed deeply before admitting that he had sold the house to his parents. He proposed getting a divorce, and my in-laws nodded in agreement. Their smirky smiles suggested they were trying to toy with me. Despite their revelation, I remained unfazed, having anticipated their plan. I promptly signed the divorce papers, placed my wedding ring on the table, and declared my intention to leave the house. I had suspicions about the unnatural behaviors of James and my in-laws, especially since their frequent visits when I wasn't home. To confirm my suspicions, I installed surveillance cameras around the house, synced with my smartphone. On the first day, I observed their daily conversations. However, one day, I stumbled upon footage where James and his parents joyfully discussed selling the house. Shocked by this revelation, I decided to plan my next steps, searching for a new residence based on the information obtained from the surveillance cameras. I took the initiative to transfer the home loan from my name to James's. If they planned to remove me from our home, I believed they should take over the mortgage payments and responsibilities. The monthly mortgage, amounting to $1,900, was paid from my hard-earned salary. Doubting that James and his parents could afford this, I resolved not to provide any financial assistance. Free from the troublesome relationship, I moved to my new, well-arranged home with new furniture, ready to embark on a new chapter in my life. On my day off, I relished the prospect of thorough rest, sleeping in past noon. As I was about to doze off again, the doorbell abruptly rang. To my surprise, James and his in-laws stood at my doorstep, uninvited. I questioned their presence, and without answering, they intruded into my house, spreading out a document in front of me. They accused me of changing the name on the house loan without permission. Expressing disbelief at their sudden appearance, I learned that right after leaving the house, they received documents about the loan name change. James and his parents were shocked, claiming they were currently unemployed and couldn't afford the high monthly loan. In a furious outburst, James declared they wouldn't pay that amount. Attempting to enlighten them on the consequences of defaulting, I explained how interest and late fees could significantly increase the final payment. James initially seemed skeptical, but after searching for information online, his expression turned to one of shock and distress. I recommended looking for new employment for a fresh start. Their faces grew even paler as they realized the seriousness of the situation. They admitted to having no savings or assets, with James burdened by substantial gambling debts and no stable income. Frustrated, they pleaded for understanding and assistance, emphasizing the years they spent together. Unmoved by their pleas, I shut the door to escape their attempts to mend the relationship. Frustrated, they reported me to the police, leading to their removal from my property. Eventually, due to financial constraints, they relocated to a more affordable apartment on the outskirts of town. James secured a part-time job, supporting his family with that income. Meanwhile, my life remained unchanged, and I focused on my job. In my free time, I started a blog on handmade crafts, gaining attention and doubling my monthly income. Requests for me to serve as an instructor for workshops and courses increased. I had no thoughts of remarrying and planned to navigate life independently. Discovering an old household account book from the early days of my marriage brought back memories of our financial struggles. With a sense of resolve, I decided to build a new happiness on my own, placing the account book back on the shelf. Idyll by Emily, aged 35, and for the past decade, I've dedicated myself to homemaking. My spouse, Michael, a doctor, and I have been leading a reasonably content life despite not having children. However, an unexpected event disrupted our 10-year marital journey. One evening, as Michael arrived home late, he dropped a bombshell. "This is the end for us, Emily," he declared abruptly. Bewildered, I questioned him. "What do you mean by the end? What's suddenly happening?" "I've decided to marry my mistress, so we're getting divorced today," he declared nonchalantly. "Marry your mistress? What are you talking about?" "I've made up my mind on leaving you and marrying her. Besides, we didn't marry for love, so you probably don't care, right?" Michael explained callously. Indeed, ours wasn't a love match. Michael's parents had orchestrated our union, and we barely knew each other before tying the knot hastily. The only commonality we shared was our original last name, a coincidence that seemed like fate during the rush of surrounding weddings. As we navigated through our wedding and marriage, I never fathomed that we would part ways after a decade. Despite lacking the foundation of a love marriage, we had lived together for 10 years. Now Michael wanted to marry someone else. It wasn't a love marriage, but we've lived together for 10 years, and now you suddenly want to marry your mistress. When did you start betraying me? I confronted him, grappling with the revelation. It's not betrayal. I met her about a year ago. She's a nurse who joined our hospital. She's charming, unlike you, always caring for me. And it's natural that I was drawn to her, Michael explained, justifying his decision. Natural. Are you serious? I responded, stunned by his revelation. Yes, I've always been serious. These 10 years living with you have been true hell. I was honestly sick and tired of supporting such a boring woman. But that ends today, he asserted coldly. How can you talk like that? It's the truth. You're a homemaker who produces nothing, while she's an active nurse. Ask any man in the country, they'd all choose her over you. Do you think a high-achieving doctor like me needs someone like you? Michael continued, his words cutting through me. After a brief pause, I mustered the strength to respond, "Fine, let's divorce." I never thought I'd be married to someone who could say such things so calmly. "We can discuss alimony and property division later with a lawyer. I'll sign the divorce papers and send them later. Until then, I'll go back to my parents' house." However, Michael interrupted, revealing a shocking truth. "No need for discussions. We don't even need a divorce paper." Perplexed, I questioned him. "What do you mean? We can't separate without it. If we don't divorce, you can't remarry." "You're so naive. It's pathetic. The truth is, I never submitted our marriage registration. We're not a married couple, just cohabitants. So there's no divorce, no alimony, no property division. You thought you'd get my money in the divorce, but you won't get a penny," Michael disclosed. Shocked by this revelation, I confronted him. "Not submitted? Wait, are you joking? We've been living as a married couple for 10 years. It's impossible that you didn't submit it." "Normally, yes. That's why I made that rule at the beginning. If you went to the office, everything would be ruined. When we got married, we made some rules. I, as a homemaker, would handle all the household chores. I was on an allowance, and part-time work was prohibited. Michael would handle all governmental and official matters," I recounted. "Why would you do such a thing?" I questioned. "Because I was about to be forced into a marriage with someone I didn't love. It's not like I was going to submit it easily. I was saving marriage for someone I was destined to be with," Michael explained. "Why didn't you refuse the marriage proposal in the first place?" I demanded. "I couldn't refuse. My parents are stubborn and wouldn't listen. I wanted a housekeeper. I'm a busy doctor and can't often tend to household chores. So, I decided to marry you as a housekeeper. It was a good deal for you too, right? You could eat well and have a roof over your head without working. You seemed desperate to get married too. What, you were probably feeling pressured because your friends were getting married, right? Even though we weren't actually married, you were seen as the woman who married a doctor. This 10-year relationship was a win-win for both of us, and it ends today. You should be grateful for the good times you had." Now you have to live on your own without relying on others, Michael declared, concluding our tumultuous chapter. I can't believe this. Oh, and one more thing. Don't tell my parents about this. If you do anything unnecessary, you know what will happen to your father, right? My father, who runs a medical equipment sales company, has a contract with the hospital where he works. It was through my marriage to him that this connection was made. If I told my in-laws, he's implying that he'd sever the contract as a threat. In other words, he's warning me not to take any action. It's your fault for being deceived. How pitiful to be thrown out with nothing, he said, laughing. But the one who would be thrown out without knowing anything was actually him. I couldn't help but burst into laughter. What's so funny all of a sudden? I can't believe you became a doctor with that kind of knowledge, he questioned. I knew all along about your mistress and that you didn't submit our marriage registration, I replied calmly. That's impossible, he insisted. That's why I've been preparing, waiting for the day you'd bring it up yourself. In fact, I had suspected his infidelity for the past 6 months. But I didn't have enough evidence to confront him. So I hired a private investigator to look into his affair. Ma'am, there are 2 things I need to tell you. The first is that your husband is indeed having an affair. We've got evidence of him entering a hotel with a nurse from his workplace. And the second is from their conversations. There's a possibility that you two are not legally married. Possibility of not being legally married? What does that mean? I asked, shocked. I overheard your husband and his mistress at a cafe. He said they didn't need to worry about alimony or property division since they never submitted a marriage registration, the investigator revealed. I can't believe it. We've been living as a married couple for 10 years. I don't know why he didn't submit the marriage registration. That's why he never let me handle any official procedures, I realized. Yeah, that seems to be the case. I can't believe this. How could this happen? I explained. It's rare to hear about not submitting a marriage registration for 10 years, but it's not unheard of. This is too much. Am I just supposed to accept this? If we were never married from the start, there's nothing I can do, I lamented. Not necessarily. What do you mean? The investigator asked. Let's make him pay for deceiving you for 10 years. First, we need to prepare without him noticing, I declared. And so, I began to prepare with the investigator to punish my husband. So what if you knew we were never married from the start? So it doesn't matter what I do with other women. I don't need to take any responsibility, he said, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit him. I pitied myself for not knowing anything. But it seems you were the one truly pitiful. What do you mean? We're considered to be in a common law relationship on paper. So what? You might not know, but you can actually claim alimony and divide property in a common law relationship. What he didn't know was that registering as a de facto marriage would backfire on him. You can make claims in a common law relationship. It's not well known, but yes, you can. Of course, there are some conditions, but looking at your case, it seems you meet them. What are these conditions? A common law relationship is established based on 2 criteria. First, both parties must have the intention to marry. If it's just living together, that's cohabitation. Mutual intent to marry is key. For instance, if you had a wedding ceremony or were recognized as a couple by others, it can be acknowledged. We've had a wedding ceremony, and our parents and friends know us as a couple. Then the first criterion is met. The second is living as if married. This includes sharing household life for over 3 years. You've been living together as a couple for over 10 years, and as a homemaker, you obviously shared the household finances. This is recognized as a marital relationship. So that means if you can provide proof of what we discussed, you can claim alimony and divide property. I'm not an expert in this area, so I'll introduce you to a lawyer. You can work with them to bring him down. After consulting with the lawyer, I was told that I could indeed claim alimony and property division from my husband. So I'm going to demand alimony and property division from you, I informed my husband, who turned pale. His confidence, which had looked down on me just a moment ago, was gone. But even if you can claim alimony and property division, You're just an unemployed woman. Do you plan to rely on your parents after being kicked out? He scoffed. Didn't I say I was preparing? I've already found a job starting next month. I've also got my eye on a new place. Don't worry about me, I responded confidently. What he thought, that a clueless homemaker would be helpless, had backfired. I'll make sure to discuss this with your parents, just so you know. Do you not care what happens to your father if they want to break the contract? He challenged. Let them. Sure, you were the link to the hospital, but the contract continued because of my father and his company's efforts. Whether or not they keep the contract is up to them. Let's see if they'll break a contract just because the doctor's wife of 10 years was a lie. Try saying that to my father and me. We won't be affected if the contract is broken over this. It only shows the depth of their trust. We'll just find another hospital to partner with, I asserted. Saying this, I took out my phone. You're not calling your parents, are you? He questioned. That's exactly what I'm doing. Our parents think we're still married. It's only natural to inform them if this relationship is ending, I stated. To my surprise, my husband began to apologize. Please let me talk to them. Don't call, he pleaded. Why? You know how strict my parents are. If they find out about this, I'm done, he explained. What does that have to do with me? You're asking me not to tell the truth because your parents are strict. Are you kidding? You could have refused the marriage from the start if you didn't intend to marry. After 10 years of a selfish marriage, you're afraid of your parents finding out. I can't accept such a convenient story, I retorted. But I can't accept your story. I'll make sure to tell both your parents and mine, I declared. And so, I called both sets of parents. All four were shocked upon hearing my story, and a meeting was promptly arranged at our house. I've heard everything over the phone. Is it true that you pretended to be married for 10 years without submitting a marriage registration? Speak up, you foolish son, my father scolded. It's true. I didn't submit it. Why would you do such a thing? Didn't he think about how Emily would feel? My mother added. I had no choice. No choice, you say? How can you even say that? It's actually your fault, Dad and Mom. I didn't want to get married, yet you started looking for a bride on your own, saying it was time, he explained. I got married because you arranged meetings and tried to force a marriage on me. You're the one who agreed to the marriage, aren't you? I had to agree. If I had refused, you would have made a fuss about it, so I decided to get married. If you were resolved to marry, why didn't you submit the marriage registration? I read about a man on the internet who was in the same situation. He didn't want to marry but had to because of his parents. He lived a married life without submitting the registration, then revealed the truth when he found someone he truly loved. That's appalling. And what happened to that guy in the end, he asked. He's now married to the person he loves and has a real marriage. So I too will marry my girlfriend and have a real marriage. Then my parents, who had been silent until now, spoke up after hearing his reasoning. A real marriage, huh? Sure, you might not have had a love marriage, but do you remember what you said at the wedding? We will never forget to care for each other and build a home full of smiles. What did those words mean to you? What were we shown? We sent our daughter to you hoping for her happiness, but you deceived her for 10 years without submitting a marriage registration. Did you build a home full of smiles? Now you're leaving her for another woman. Can someone who acts without a shred of care, even if they change partners, truly have a real marriage? Well, he began, but my father-in-law interrupted. I was happy you married our daughter, not just because you were a doctor. I thought she could build a happy home with someone as sincere as you, but it seems we were mistaken and deceived. And you threatened our daughter. If she told us about this, you'd cut off the contract with our company. Seriously. If you're going to threaten our daughter, we'll cut off the contract ourselves. Be warned, we will tell the truth when asked. Why? If you do that, there will be rumors at the hospital. Well, yes, but that's the result of your own actions. You were the one who threatened us with cutting off the contract. My husband was in complete panic at this unexpected turn of events. Please wait. This is getting out of hand. Let's just talk, he pleaded. At that moment, My father-in-law grabbed him by the collar, furious. "Don't mess with us. We didn't raise you to be such a scoundrel." "What were you thinking, father? Please stop. By not submitting the marriage registration, you might have thought you were doing yourself a favor. But because of your selfish actions, Emily was strung along for 10 years. What were you thinking, causing such trouble to others?" The living room fell silent. My husband, faced with my father-in-law's words, had nothing more to say. "Emily and your parents, I'm truly sorry for the trouble caused by this idiot," my father-in-law said. "No, you parents shouldn't apologize. It's not your fault. However, it's partly our responsibility as parents for letting him act this way. For now, we'll take him home and make sure he doesn't continue his reckless behavior. We'll deal with the aftermath properly. We're very sorry for all this." And with that, my husband was taken away by his parents back to his childhood home. "You've been through a lot. For now, you should come back home and rest. We'll think about what to do next later." "You don't need to worry about anything right now," my parents said, thinking I was completely exhausted and deceived. They spoke to me with such kindness. "Thank you, but I won't go back home yet. I still have things I need to do." I declined their offer and stayed in my own home. What I had to do was prepare for the final settlement with my now ex-husband. Gathering evidence for our common law relationship, I was getting ready to claim alimony and divide our assets. A few weeks later, a meeting with a lawyer was arranged. However, even if I agree with alimony, why should I divide my property? She's been a homemaker for 10 years, never working a day. All the furniture, clothes, food. I paid for everything. Now you're telling me to hand over the money I worked hard for, the furniture I bought. He ranted, unable to accept that his money would be shared with me. Yes, that's correct. The money you earned and the furniture are subject to property division, the lawyer explained. Why does it have to be like that? He protested. Who did the housework? While you were working, who cooked meals with the groceries you bought? That's irrelevant now. No, it's very relevant. A homemaker is entitled to property division because housework and child care have economic value. Speaking as a human, not just a lawyer, do you think housework is something anyone can do, that it's just expected of a homemaker? The reason you could live freely is because of her support. Don't get that wrong. And this situation is a result of your actions, yet you have the audacity to be selfish, the lawyer continued. What'd you say? Never mind. Anyway, she's entitled to half of the assets for property division. That's how it is. Dan, regarding alimony, we intend to claim $100,000 from you. $100,000? Why so much for a relationship that wasn't even a marriage? It's precisely because you weren't married. Normally, alimony claims in common law relationships range from $10,000 to $40,000. However, in your case, you pretended to be married for 10 years and selfishly tried to kick her out when you found someone else. The amount is determined by the severity and duration of your actions. But still, you may think 10 years is just a short time, but it's longer than you realize. During that time, she devoted herself to you, believing you were a married couple. You have no right to complain after betraying her. A perfect rebuttal left him speechless, and he reluctantly agreed to my demands. Then I also sent a notice of claim for alimony to his mistress. I knew who and where she was, thanks to the investigator, as she was a nurse working at the same hospital. The mistress, having heard from him that there was no possibility of alimony or property division, must have been utterly shocked by the contents of the claim. Wait a minute, this isn't what you told me. What do you want? She confronted him at the hospital with the notice I had sent. I told you not to talk to me at the hospital. I got this from your wife. You said there wouldn't be any alimony because we weren't married. What's this all about? I later learned that, in a panic after being served with the alimony claim from me, she confronted him at the hospital with the notice I had sent. Okay. Let's talk about this later, not here. There are too many people around. We'll both be in trouble if this turns into a rumor. I don't care about that. I can't pay this kind of alimony. You said it was okay. so you should pay. Pay it for me. I won't pay a penny. You were the one who wanted this relationship. You said I was the only one for you, that you wanted to marry me. Hey, quiet down. Everyone can hear us. Just so you know, I'm not in the wrong here. If you want to make amends with your wife, do it yourself. Tell her I don't owe her a penny, that you'll take care of everything. This exchange led to the revelation of their affair to the entire hospital. It quickly became the talk of the place, and then the final blow was my father's request to the hospital. I apologize, but we would like to terminate our contract at the end of next month. The hospital, aware of the rumors, asked my father, "Excuse me for asking, but is the reason for canceling the contract related to Dr. Michael's affair? It's already become a rumor." Yes, a nurse presumed to be involved caused quite a scene. I never imagined he had been pretending to be married for 10 years without submitting a marriage registration. I never expected it to turn out like this. You mean he never submitted the registration? Weren't you aware that he hadn't submitted the marriage registration? All we knew was that he, being married, had an affair. What do you mean he didn't submit the marriage registration? With my father's request, it was revealed that he had been deceiving me for 10 years by not submitting the marriage registration. This news spread among the other nurses. Dr. Michael deceived his wife for 10 years without submitting a marriage registration, and he had an affair with a nurse. How low? How could he do that? Can someone really not notice for 10 years? Apparently, Emily's maiden name was the same, and he managed all the official paperwork. That's scary. The rumors spread not only among hospital staff, but also to patients, and both Michael and his mistress received cold stares. Unable to endure, they soon resigned from the hospital. As my father told me, "Did you manage to get the alimony?" Yes, I received payments from both him and his mistress. She refused to pay until the end, claiming she was deceived, but the lawyer made it clear her argument wouldn't hold, and she reluctantly agreed to pay. That's good. What about you, Dad? Did the contract get canceled after all? No, that's off the table. He resigned, and since our company is trusted, the hospital asked us not to cancel the contract. We couldn't cancel it after they asked like that. That's a relief. Then I started a new life in a new place and was living happily. About a year and a half later, my ex-husband contacted me. "Is it true you got remarried?" I had married a man I met at work, and somehow he had found out. I wondered whose number this was, going through the trouble of changing your number just to contact me. Just answer my question. Yes, I got married. You betrayed me. Betray? We were never legally married, so I didn't think it would matter to you. Right? That's a different matter indeed. Things are different now. We're completely separated, so my marriage has nothing to do with you. Is that why you contacted me? After I said this, he seemed at a loss for words. Then he taunted. Of course, you're still unmarried, since you probably haven't submitted a marriage registration again. You're that kind of woman. But things weren't as he imagined. Unfortunately for you, my husband isn't the kind of person to do such terrible things. He knows all about your story, so to ensure I wouldn't feel anxious, we went to the office together to submit the registration. Sadly for you. Since Michael and Sarah returned for a hometown childbirth, please leave. My mother-in-law stated in a chilly voice. Her eldest son and his wife are due in 3 days. Me leave? I asked, confused and stunned. Yes, we don't need another mother figure anymore. You've been redundant for a while now. Michael and his family will be living here, so make sure you're out by tomorrow, she continued. I knew I was never truly accepted into the family since the day I got married. Treated as a wife, never did I imagine they would tell me to leave. You barren failure, you were allowed to experience raising a child. Be grateful. We have no obligation to support you anymore. It seems like Simon is tired of you too. What's Simon to? I gulped down my saliva. If it's not a conspiracy between my mother-in-law and Michael, then I don't need to stand in ceremony with my husband anymore. Foolish to drive me out, But it was my mother-in-law who ignited this. What happens to this house now is none of my concern. May they face the reality they have ignored squarely. Personally, I'm Anna Thompson, 45 years old, living with my husband and mother-in-law in a popular area close to the station. The access to the city center is superb. When house hunting, my picky husband, recently promoted to a managerial position, insisted on a spacious apartment. The rent was steep, but the space and rooms made it worth the stretch. My husband, Simon, 8 years my senior, a divorce I met through a friend's introduction. Comforted by the enveloping kindness unique to an older man, we decided to get married after 2 years of dating. Even when I told him about my infertility due to past illness, his affection did not waver. Likewise, my feelings remained unchanged when I learned of the circumstances he carried. My husband had a son named Michael from his previous marriage. I'm truly sorry to ask you, who have never been married, to live with my parents and son. I won't make you suffer. I'll ensure you're happy. That was the promise he made to me. To prevent me from feeling suffocated, my husband suggested moving to a spacious apartment where I could have my own room. Michael, turning 10 this year, won't need much care with my mom around. You don't have to push yourself. After his divorce, my husband got help with childcare from his parents at their home. A few years later, Simon's father passed away in an accident, and it seems his mother took over as Michael's caretaker. From the first meeting, Michael wouldn't even make eye contact with me. I thought it might be his shy nature, approaching a difficult age, so I didn't worry. As long as they accepted me as a member of the household, I was content. My mother-in-law was a quiet and refined person. When I visited to formally introduce myself after our engagement, she treated me with such politeness that I thought we would get along fine living together. I'll continue to prepare the meals as I have been. Simon comes home late, so it's okay if we eat at different times, right, Anna? I'll leave the cleaning and laundry to you. All right, let's work well together. After getting married, I switched from a full-time employee at the pharmacy to a part-timer due to the division of household chores. I started work a bit later in the morning, so I wouldn't get home until nearly 8 p.m. Dinner was always ready when I arrived, making me feel good about living together. My mother-in-law and Michael usually had dinner before I got home, so I was always eating alone. Even after getting married, I sometimes felt a sense of, is this it? But I came to accept that this was our family style. From the beginning, my mother-in-law never really liked me and didn't consider me part of the family at all. Michael, the school's activity day is before summer, right? When is it? We're all going to see you. Sometime after getting married, I tried to break the ice with Michael, who still hadn't warmed up to me. No, as Michael faltered, my mother-in-law interjected, "We'll go there. Just Simon and me. Anna, you don't need to worry about it." I misunderstood her words, thinking she was just being considerate. "I can get the day off work. Let's all go together." "You don't need that. You're Simon's wife. And mixed family has always been just Simon and me." I was quite shocked when I brought it up with my husband at night. He said, "Mom's been clinging to Michael. She probably thinks you're trying to take him away. I'll talk to her eventually." I began to join as a mother at the activity day, but Michael and I rarely spent any time together outside of school events. Sometimes I could tell Michael wanted to say something, but my mother-in-law always cut in between us. I later found out that she had been bad-mouthing me to Michael. Anna said she could be happy with Simon if Michael weren't around. She's a terrible person. Dad must be deceived by her too. If a boy in his formative years hears such things, it wouldn't be strange for him to distrust me. It was a sickening story, but at that time, I hadn't imagined that my mother-in-law could do such a thing. After graduating high school, Michael immediately moved in with his girlfriend and left home. As soon as he started college, a year after he started working, he married her without a ceremony. Once Michael moved out, my mother-in-law surprisingly stopped doing housework altogether. Instead, it seemed that picking on me had become her sole entertainment. She stopped cooking, which she used to do before, and now just sits at the dining table waiting for me to come home. Without a moment to sit down, I would stand in the kitchen and prepare dinner. You're really inefficient. At this rate, it'll take you all night. I was never good at cooking, partly because I had always relied on my mother-in-law to prepare the meals. Whenever I did manage to cook, she would taste each dish and invariably complain, "This tastes awful." "I'm sorry, I'm trying my best." You're astonishingly tone-deaf when it comes to flavors, Anna. It's a good thing Michael never had to eat this. How terrible. If she thought so, she might as well make it herself. But it seemed she just wanted to complain to me. Not just about the meals, but she started nitpicking everything from the cleaning I never used to do to the laundry. "Why are there so many wrinkles on the laundry? You have to vacuum every nook and cranny. You really can't do anything right. Didn't your family teach you anything?" With that, my mother-in-law sighed while looking at me being belittled. Even about my family, I clenched my fists in frustration. "I don't know how you won over Simon, but I can't see much charm in you as a woman." And she always concluded with the same line, "If you hadn't come, Michael would have never left." I understood that there was a gaping hole in her heart since Michael had left. Maybe it was what they call empty nest syndrome. If taking it out on me made her feel better, that's what I told myself to endure it. But her bullying took on new energy after a certain event. That event was the pregnancy announcement from Michael's wife, Sarah. The joy my mother-in-law exhibited was unlike anything I had seen before. "It's Michael's baby. It's bound to be adorable. Yeah, he'll be my first grandchild." Watching the two of them rejoice, I was happy too. But my mother-in-law's excitement was beyond normal, probably because Michael asked her, "Grandma, can Sarah have our baby at your place?" Sarah's family home is an hour away by plane, and since they have no one else to rely on here, they turn to us for help. Of course, my mother-in-law wouldn't dream of turning down Michael's request. The phone calls from Michael started to become frequent, and her excitement went through the roof. The next day after getting the news, she started preparing enthusiastically. From cleaning out Michael's room to preparing the bedding and making a list of baby items, it was like she had great-grandchild fever. Naturally, I had to get involved too. When I returned from work, "Anna, I vacuumed Michael's room, so you need to wipe the floors and the windows and please wax them too. This weekend we're going to the department store to look at baby cribs." Cleaning and waxing at night was tough, especially after a long day at work. If I even thought about cutting corners, I'd be told to do it over again. Moreover, my mother-in-law started asking for money, and before I knew it, the house was overflowing with baby stuff. "Anna, I need you to withdraw some money tomorrow. There are things I want to get ready for the baby again. Isn't it wasteful to prepare so much when Sarah and Michael haven't even arrived? Shouldn't we wait and choose together with them?" I had wanted to meet my mother-in-law's requests, but I was troubled by the relentless spending. How can you be so cold? It's Simon's grandchild. Oh, that's right. You're not related to Michael by blood. You don't care, do you? That's not true. Please don't say that. I just thought Sarah might want to pick things out herself. When do you want to choose things for your own child? Perhaps because I was making a valid point, my mother-in-law glared at me sharply. I immediately thought I had gone too far, but it was too late. Without a word, my mother-in-law went back to her room looking upset. I did reflect on it, but I was also shocked to be spoken about in such a way regarding Michael. The next morning, my mother-in-law didn't come out of her room, perhaps still angry. Simon had a 3-day business trip starting that day, so he just called out, "I'm leaving," through her door. Please don't throw cold water on Mom's great-grandchild fever. She hasn't been the same since Michael left. You were worried too, right? I was. But if we spend all our money like this, we'll have nothing left when Michael and Sarah arrive, right? Simon's face immediately turned sour. Are you saying my earnings are too low? That's not what I'm saying at all, Simon just said, "Fine," and left with a look of dissatisfaction. Discussions about money always end up like this. Since I'm the one managing our finances, I can't help but think ahead. Of course, there's a reason for that. We've been married for 13 years. Simon has provided me with a very comfortable life. Your part-time income is for you to enjoy. Simon had always told me so. I saved everything beyond what I needed for myself. Even though it's in my name, I consider it our shared property. But then Simon's company's performance declined, and over the last 5 years, his salary has dropped to two-thirds of what it was when we first got married. While there's uncertainty whether his company will last until his retirement, he doesn't seem to consider changing jobs. For appearances in front of my mother-in-law, my husband couldn't give up his title as a department head. Now I'm the one paying the rent, and he covers the living expenses. We've kept this from my mother-in-law to save my husband's face. That day, I left work a bit early to apologize to my mother-in-law. When I got home, she was already sitting at the dining table waiting for me. I'm sorry about yesterday. I may have gone too far, I admitted, but my mother-in-law remained silent. Instead, she blindsided me with unexpected news. Michael and Sarah are returning for a hometown childbirth. Please vacate, my mother-in-law declared in a chilly tone. The eldest son and his wife were set to arrive in 3 days. Perplexed and stunned, I asked, I have to leave. She affirmed, yes, we don't need another mother figure anymore. You've been redundant for a while. Michael and his family will be living here. Make sure you're out by tomorrow. The realization hit me hard. I had never truly been accepted into the family since the day I got married. I had always been treated as an outsider. The news of Michael's return for the birth made it clear. You barren failure, my mother-in-law continued. You are allowed to experience raising a child. Be grateful. We have no obligation to support you anymore. It seems like Simon is tired of you too. Maybe he's getting along well with a new girlfriend by now. Shocked, I gulped down my saliva, contemplating the possibility of my relationship with my husband growing distant. Could this be a trap I fell into, thinking my husband would never? I remembered that, up until a year ago, he never had overnight business trips. All right, I'll eat out tonight, I said, grabbing my bag and leaving the house to walk aimlessly. I needed to calm my severely shaken heart. Worried about my husband, I tried calling his cell phone despite my mother-in-law's words. I still wanted to talk to him, but he didn't answer, no matter how many times I rang. I dialed his office, only to learn that he had taken a couple of days off. My mother-in-law's words began to ring more true. Could he really be on a trip with another woman? Dark thoughts crowded my mind, and I found myself overwhelmed with emotion, tears streaming down my face. Staggering along, I noticed the tavern behind the station, a place we used to frequent when we first moved here. It's still here, I thought as I entered. Welcome. The tavern owner's expression clouded briefly upon seeing me. Then he nodded in recognition. Hey, long time no see. It's been about 8 years. I used to come here a lot with my husband, I said. Yes, it's been a while. I remember you, he replied. I couldn't help but smile, feeling a sense of relief. Can I get a beer and a mixed plate of grilled chicken, please? I asked. The owner, a man of few words as always, nodded. As I sipped the cold beer and savored the grilled chicken, I took out my cell phone, and the screensaver lit up with a photo of us when Michael turned 18. Looking sharp in the slim suit we had picked out together, I wished for us to be closer as a family. The beer washed down my throat, taking the day's fatigue with it. Could I really move out tomorrow? Contemplating the next steps, I searched for moving companies, finding one for the job the next day. I also looked up junk buyers and saved 2 companies in my favorites. Changing the screensaver on my phone seemed to clear my head completely. The beer and grilled chicken tasted exceptional. I decided to think about everything once I got home. Walking away from the tavern, I was called from behind. A young waitress from the tavern was running towards me. Excuse me, are you Mrs. Thompson? I noticed the screensaver on your phone, she said. Confirming my identity, she dropped a bombshell. My husband was having an affair with one of their employees. We exchanged contact information, and she promised to keep me informed. My mother-in-law's words appeared to be true. Instead of sadness, a fierce anger welled up within me. It was time to confront this head-on. Booking an appointment with a moving company, I resolved to move out that day, if it wasn't a conspiracy, and my mother-in-law and Michael were truly involved, then I no longer needed to honor my husband. Returning home, I packed my belongings until midnight. Without hesitation, the moving company arrived on time, and I made it clear that I was leaving. As requested, they took everything I had bought, erasing every trace of my presence. My mother-in-law panicked, but I was resolute. I'm taking everything I bought. You can start a completely new life tomorrow, I declared, suppressing a laugh. Ignoring her protests, I proceeded to have everything taken out. My mother-in-law complained loudly to the movers, but there was nothing she could do. The only items left in the house were piles of baby gear and her old dresser from before the marriage. Well then, I bid you farewell. There should be no trace of me left, so enjoy your life with Simon, Michael, and his family, I declared, leaving her sitting there stunned. Placing the keys on the table, I exited the room. The movers held onto my things for a while, and I decided to stay with a single colleague for some time. Feeling a sense of completion, I slept soundly that night. A week later, I finally heard from my husband. I wondered if he was scheming with that other woman. While my husband was dragging his feet, I received a call from the young woman at the tavern. Got a good shot, so I'll send it to you. In the photo, my husband was chatting up a not-so-young woman at the tavern. Maybe out of a sense of justice, the young woman must have followed them after they closed. There was also a photo attached of the two entering a hotel. Even in such times, the cheating continues, I thought, and any last bit of affection I had for my husband dissipated. I asked for the woman's name and had her address looked up. The next day, armed with all the evidence of the affair, my husband called. Anna, where are you? Michael and his family are here too. Aren't you going to come home soon? No, I'm not coming back. Your mom told me to leave. I'm done here. Michael and his family are going to live with you now, right? I knew it. Michael and his family were out of money and looking to crash at our place. I heard that after graduating from a vocational school, they'd been hopping from job to job, and now they're working part-time. No. I want you back, Anna. I went to the pharmacy, and they said you're off for a bit. Got a place to crash. Yeah, I'm fine. So don't worry about me. Your mom and Michael didn't like me, right? I reckon they're happy to have the place to themselves without me around. My snide comment left my husband speechless. He knew his mother and Michael never accepted me as family, but pretended not to see it. Well, all right. I have something to say, so I'll come back there once. My husband replied with a relieved please in his voice. Days later, I returned to the house for the first time in a long while. Some new pieces of furniture and appliances were inside. When Michael and Sarah saw me, they just nodded from their seats on the sofa without getting up. As I took a seat, my mother-in-law glared at me with a scary look on her face. The atmosphere was tense, and just as I thought to get things done and leave quickly, Michael spoke up. What are you doing here? You took everything from the house. What kind of monster does that? Dad's been supporting you, and you've had it easy. I sighed. I took everything because I paid for it. I wanted to remove all traces of me, just as you wanted, right? That's crazy, right? There's no way you could afford all that just working part-time at the pharmacy, my husband said. When I glanced at him, he started talking as if he'd resigned himself. We've been getting by on what Anna and I both make for a little while now. Then the stuff you took should be both yours. Instead of my speechless husband, I decided to speak up. Simon's company has been doing poorly, and his salary plummeted. That's why, for the past 5 years, I've been covering what's missing. But that wasn't enough, and now I'm the one paying our rent. My mother-in-law looked at my husband with surprise. I'm not just a part-timer, I'm a part-time pharmacist, and the pay is quite good. I'm making more than Simon now. At my words, my husband awkwardly looked away. My mother-in-law's eyes were frantically shifting between my husband and me. From now on, Michael, you'll be paying the rent. You're going to live here, right? After all the help your gran was given, it's time for you to take care of her. Michael looked at me with a shocked expression. When I dropped the news suddenly, rent? How much is it? He asked. It's $5,600. Good luck, since it seems my role as a mother is over. I don't have an obligation to take care of you anymore. Pull yourself together. You're going to be a father soon. Michael murmured with a shake of his head, That's impossible. It was Sarah who raised her voice upon hearing this. Wait, $5,600? Weren't we supposed to live here for free, covering rent and living expenses? I almost burst out laughing. Don't worry, Sarah. You can move to a cheaper place. Simon still makes a decent salary. Hearing this, Sarah's face relaxed a bit. Oh, since I'll be leaving you, Simon, life might still get tough with your mistress, huh? At that, Sarah finally broke down in tears. It was my husband who panicked. What? What are you talking about? Sarah replied, Oh, your mother told me about the new woman. I guess it's time to end my role as a wife, too. My husband must think there's no evidence. Indeed, it hasn't even been 10 days since I left the house. Wouldn't that hurt Mary if she heard you? Well, I'll get in touch about that later. At the mention of Mary's name, my husband jolted, realizing that I knew everything. He held his head inside. This is not the atmosphere to write a divorce paper. Well then, I'll be going now. Please talk to me further through a lawyer. Neither my husband Simon nor Michael said anything more, staying silent as I grabbed my bag and stood up. My mother-in-law stood up simultaneously, slamming her hands on the table. She yelled with a voice too strong for an elderly woman. What the hell? It's all your fault our home is in shambles. I was instantly irritated. It was you who told me to leave. It was you who said Simon had another woman. And you interfered with my relationship with Michael. Everything was you. I felt a surge of heat in my chest. I regretted not being more assertive with my relationship with Michael, not holding back because of my mother-in-law. Michael has nothing to do with this. It's time for you to step up, Simon. He's going through a hard time. You should support him as his wife. Take responsibility as a family member. What is she even talking about? If she hadn't called Michael back home, if she hadn't hinted at Simon's affair, I would still happily support Simon and this home I always believed in and supported. Simon, where are you? Michael, why are you still here? It's all her fault. My mother-in-law's lips tightened into a line, and she was trembling. I slipped past the silent mother-in-law and quickly left the room. Afterward, Simon agreed to the divorce rather easily. It seems my determination was strong, and he couldn't counter the evidence of the affair. Shortly after, it seemed like they started the process of moving out of the apartment. In the end, Michael and Sarah went back to their apartment and never lived with the mother-in-law. Simon seems to be considering remarriage, but Mary was furious over the alimony and his request for her to live with his mother. I've heard they're considering whether to place my mother-in-law in a care facility. After all the love she poured into her son and grandson, it's somewhat sad to think they're ready to abandon her now. Perhaps she's served her purpose too. If my mother-in-law had said nothing back then, and it had just been a simple trip home for childbirth, maybe we would still be living together. After the divorce, Michael sent me an apology letter. He wrote about how, as a child, he really wanted to be more spoiled, how he couldn't talk to me because his grandma disliked it, and how happy he was when I attended school events. Maybe I should have reached out more. Perhaps then, we could have built a different relationship. Even though our relationship has ended, I quietly pray for Michael's happiness in life. I've returned to work as a pharmacist and quickly rented an apartment close to my workplace. I don't feel good about keeping the furniture and appliances I took with me, so I had them all picked up and disposed of by a junk removal service. Life without my mother-in-law's harassment is peaceful and comfortable. For a while, I want to live for my own happiness, not someone else's. After not seeing him for a month, John just thrust a divorce lawyer's business card at me without even asking, Are you okay? Or how are you feeling divorcing a wife who doesn't work? Pay me $1,000 a month as alimony. Sounds good. Take care. John chuckled as he said this, standing beside him. Emily was wrapping her arm around his, wearing a similar smug expression. Fine, let's divorce then. I said it so casually that John seemed a bit surprised, but he quickly shared his smile with Emily. Good thing John isn't much of a thinker. It makes my plan easier to execute. After the divorce papers got approved, I decided to start my revenge plan on both of them. I will make them cry as a celebration of my recovery. My name is Sarah Wolf. I'm a 47-year-old illustrator. I'd also work as a children's book author. I just love drawing. I have two childhood friends, John and Emily. They're important friends to me, and John is also my husband. It all started when John asked me out as I was heading to a different college after high school. I was surprised. I'd thought he was into Emily, but I couldn't say no to a confession from John, whom I had secretly liked. After some thought and consultation with Emily, I accepted John's proposal. Emily's behavior had been a bit problematic since teens, but she was still a dear friend to both John and me. However, Emily had a tendency to snatch other people's boyfriends and then dump them once they became obsessed with her, causing problems time and again. Her parents were concerned, so John and I often spent time with her to watch over her. John and I got married when we were 25, 4 years later. Emily brought her fiancé into our lives. His name was George, a professional working for a top-tier company. Nice to meet you, Sarah and John. I've heard so much about you. Looking forward to our future together. George was very polite, and we all got along immediately. We would get together during holidays and vacations, taking trips or going on long train rides to enjoy some drinks. However, things started falling apart after Emily got pregnant 2 years into her marriage. John and I originally had many siblings, so there was no worry about an heir. So we decided we didn't need children. Both of us loved kids, but weren't keen on actively caring for them. Besides, we loved our freedom to travel and enjoy drinks. We often found it heartwarming to see families with children, but it was never more or less than that. When Emily announced her pregnancy, John's attitude started to change. He quit smoking because Emily said she couldn't stand the smell, and even offered to drive her to doctor's appointments using his vacation days. I warned him, George might get upset if you're always with Emily. But John argued back, you have work, don't you? She's our childhood friend, and she's reaching out for help. You're heartless. I said, I've been buying things and helping where I can, but going with her to the obstetrician is crossing the line. When I said that, John frowned, and then he glared at me. Why? Because Emily wants it, right? She says she's anxious about the checkup. I can't just let her go alone if she's anxious. All the more reason for George to go with her, right? If you go with her every time, it's almost like you're the father of the baby in her belly. John jealous? You're not going to get pregnant anyway, so what's the problem? He didn't take my concerns seriously, and instead started to snap, saying I was being annoying. We had hardly ever had a fight during our marriage, but things changed when Emily got pregnant. Our arguments increased, and that didn't change even after Emily gave birth. In fact, John started spending even more time with Emily and their child, Emma. But when Emma was 6, an incident occurred. It had to do with the attendees of Emma's graduation ceremonies. The day before the graduation, John suddenly started rummaging through the closet. John, what are you doing? Have a meeting tomorrow. John's workplace had a casual dress code, but there was a rule to wear a suit during client meetings, so he always kept a few suits ready. But they were all thrown on the bed now. Ah, no, just trying to decide what to wear for the graduation ceremony. What? You're seriously thinking of attending the graduation? Yeah, George, can't make it. Emily asked me. Wait, that's absurd. No matter how you look at it. I inadvertently raised my voice in denial. Immediately, John's face turned sour. I knew he occasionally picked Emma up from kindergarten, and I had done so myself when asked. Yet it was nonsensical for a childhood friend who wasn't even a biological parent to attend a graduation ceremony. What? You still doubt me and Emily? I'm disappointed that you can't even help out. That's not the point. Point anyway. I'm attending the graduation tomorrow, so iron a shirt properly. John said that and abruptly ended the conversation, leaving me behind and going to the bedroom. I had no choice but to call Emily. Hello, Emily. About tomorrow. Sorry about tomorrow. I'm borrowing John. But won't George be upset about the graduation attendance, Sarah? What are you talking about? Obviously, I haven't told George that the graduation is tomorrow. I'll tell him after the ceremony. I was shocked to learn that George didn't know about the graduation schedule. Upon further questioning, it seemed that Emily hadn't informed George about any of the kindergarten events so far, and John had been acting as the father at the kindergarten, which made me dizzy with its selfishness. Wait a minute, Emily. Isn't that extremely unreasonable? It's disrespectful to George, and just because he's a childhood friend, eh? What's wrong? Sarah, you're scary. Well, see you tomorrow. Wait, Emily. I was trembling with anger at Emily, who unilaterally hung up the phone. Still, in the end, I ironed a shirt, prepared a tie, and the next morning saw John off to Emma's graduation ceremony. Since then, Emily and John started going out more frequently, from once a month to once a week, and then to 3 times a week. Eventually, even George seemed to have some suspicions, and one day, while John and Emily were out, he visited our house alone. I'm sorry for visiting you late at night. There's something that's been bothering me. Is it about the 2 of them? Yes, I would like you to take a look at this. George showed me the GPS history he had installed in Emily's car. It showed that she had been staying at a hotel 3 times a week. All of those days, she was out with John, and just by looking at George's face, I understood what that meant. What do you want to do, George? I want to take revenge on those 2. Me too. I can't forgive them for betraying us after all this time. We started planning our revenge on them secretly. First, I started by increasing my income because I had been saving by doing housework and taking care of Emma. My income had drastically decreased. George switched to working from home. And when Emily and John would go out, he would bring Emma to my house, and we would take care of her together. Neither Emily nor John realized that we knew about their relationship, and we were able to gather solid evidence. Once we had collected enough evidence and were ready to take our revenge, we discovered a shocking truth about Emma. George and I struggled with the decision, but we both agreed that we didn't want to hurt young Emma, so we decided to wait until she was an adult to take our revenge. However, even though we decided to endure for 10 years, I was struck with a serious illness. I needed long-term hospitalization, and even at best, I wouldn't be discharged for at least 2 years. Although I could work from the hospital room, it was certain that I would have to reduce my workload. After informing George about the situation, I consulted John. However, John's reaction was no different from when we were making small talk. I'll visit you once in a while. I felt that John no longer had any affection for me, as he didn't even ask about my condition or the name of the disease. In reality, John only visited once a month or once every 2 months, and after Emma's 15th birthday, she started acting strangely. Although she used to visit me almost every day right after I was hospitalized, she became distant after her 15th birthday. However, neither George nor I could figure out why, and we were puzzled. Even when we asked Emma, she just said, "Don't worry about it." However, we ended up learning the reason from John, who rarely showed up. Hey, it's been a while. Yeah, it has. John, who had completely transformed into a flashy appearance, walked in without even knocking. After not seeing him for a month, John just thrust a divorce lawyer's business card at me without even asking, "Are you okay?" or "How are you feeling divorcing a wife who doesn't work?" "Pay me $1,000 a month as alimony. That's the deal. So take care," John said, grinning from ear to ear. Beside him, Emily wrapped her arms around John's with a similar expression on her face. Fine, let's divorce then. I casually agreed, which seemed to surprise John for a moment. But he quickly exchanged smiles with Emily. It was good that John wasn't the type to think too deeply. That's why my plan worked so well. After receiving a notification that the divorce was finalized from John, I decided to start my revenge plan against the two of them. I will make them cry as a celebration of my recovery. I promptly started to take action. First, I contacted George to transfer hospitals. Then I informed my lawyer that they would be mediating between the two parties from now on. George also began to act at the same time. He moved near my new hospital with Emma, and he started to visit me frequently. Emma still had a gloomy expression, but I was happy that she came to see me every day. Most of my belongings were already in the hospital room. So I told John to dispose of the rest. I didn't want to bring anything that the two of them might have touched into my new life. Once the hospital transfer and George and Emma's move settled down, I received a call from John. I had only left my seat for a few minutes, but my smartphone already showed 30 missed calls. I answered the phone, feeling exasperated. What? Hey, what the hell is going on? I could hear the voice of a troubled real estate agent behind John's panicked voice. I also heard Emily yelling, which made me feel sick. What do you mean? What's going on? It's obviously about the house. Why do we have to move out? John shouted at me as if it wasn't his fault at all. I replied to him coolly, obviously because that's my house. Huh. John seemed to have completely forgotten. But the truth was the house we lived in was a room I rented as a workspace. When I started to make a living as a freelancer, at that time, I didn't have enough income to maintain two houses, and John didn't have enough income to live alone. So he ended up moving into my place. Therefore, Jan had never paid the rent or utility bills for that room. Although I received some money from him for living expenses, it wasn't enough to maintain the place. Unfortunately, that room was already canceled. It was far from the hospital I transferred to, so I had processed the cancellation the day after submitting the divorce papers. I didn't inform him because the real estate agent who knew the situation said they would contact him. George and Emma suddenly disappeared, and our house was sold. What are we going to do about our new house? I don't know. Maybe stay in a business hotel for now. As I turned on the speaker and started working, John yelled in frustration, "Don't screw with me." However, he seemed to remember something and started speaking in a more soothing tone. Well, whatever. When will you transfer the money? We're running low on cash. What are you talking about? Huh? Don't mess around. I told you to pay $1,000, didn't I? Oh, I don't recall agreeing to that. My nonchalant response was met with incoherent screaming from John on the other end of the phone. Apparently, he thought he could get money from me and had been squandering it. Even if he had $1,000 left, how did he plan to get by for the rest of the month? Hey, don't just stay silent. Say something. There's really nothing to talk about. My retort left John momentarily dumbfounded, but he soon started yelling again, growing increasingly annoyed. I addressed John in as cheerful a tone as I could muster. Anyway, we're basically strangers now, so please don't contact me anymore. You'll hear from my lawyer. Huh? Lawyer? Hey, wait a minute. I hung up without listening to John's response. He tried calling back several times, but I ignored it, and eventually the calls stopped. However, angry that I didn't answer, John started ignoring calls from my lawyer. He certainly had a childish side, but I never imagined he'd be the kind of person who didn't mind causing trouble for others. I sighed deeply at John's selfishness. A few months later, after a temporary discharge from the hospital, I visited John's parents' house. In front of me were John and Emily, both looking small and trembling. You telling my parents is a low blow. Oh, I just reported that we got divorced. Jan glared at me in response to my answer, but he shrank back under his father's stern gaze. Actually, I had a great relationship with my in-laws, even visiting and dining with them when John wasn't around. Despite being so well loved, I felt it was wrong not to share the details of our divorce. So I went to visit them. Is it true that you're remarrying Emily? Yes, it's true. True. Emily, Emma, and I are going to start over as a family. What are you talking about? Your only family is Sarah. She's not my family anymore. John's words made his father frown with a look that seemed to say, "Give me a break." John shook his head a few times, then handed me a piece of paper. It was a bill from a nearby luxury hotel. What's this? It's the bill from the hotel we stayed at. John, acting as if it was obvious, pointed at the bill on the table, then suddenly collapsed. Oh, what the heck, Mom? I didn't raise you to be like this. My mother-in-law, gasping for breath, was met with a look of disbelief from John. Next to him, Emily wore the same expression. Why are you so angry? It's just that the family is changing because I'm getting married. Plus, you'll have a grandchild, a blood-related one at that. Aren't you happy? You two didn't. My mother-in-law, looking as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing, glanced at Emily, then turned her gaze to me. Both my in-laws understood that I didn't want children and still treated me as their own daughter. Of course, they treated Emily, my childhood friend, similarly. But there was always a boundary between a daughter-in-law and a friend. I remembered Emily often complaining about that. So I was certain my mother-in-law wouldn't be happy about this situation, and Emily should have known it too. You dote on Emma, right? It'll be your grandchild, so you'll be happy, right? It's because she's a child I've known since she was little. Oh, but half of her blood is from John, right? Even after all this, Emily, showing no sign of remorse and acting as if she couldn't understand the problem, gave me goosebumps. At that moment, someone who had been silent until now spoke up. Enough already. It's disgusting, huh? Emma, who had been playing with her smartphone in the corner of the room, spoke to Emily without looking up. The room fell into a stunned silence. My dad is the only one I consider my father, whether we're related by blood or not. He's the only one. But you know, John has always been the one to attend your school events. I heard everything from Dad, how he was always informed of the event dates after they were over, how eventually even the events themselves were kept from him. But Dad always said I was his daughter, so I am his daughter, and I will never be yours. Emma glared at Emily as she said this. Then, sitting beside me, she switched to a more concerned tone. You know, when I found out about this, I thought you would hate me. But Dad said that wasn't the case, so I came here today. Emma, I love you so much. You were so kind to visit me every day while I was in the hospital. I was really happy, Sarah. Emma, perhaps relieved of her anxiety, teared up and hugged me tightly. It might indeed be a child resulting from an affair between John and Emily. Yet it's a child I've taken care of for 15 years. There's no way I don't have affection for her. Speaking of which, Emily, weren't you curious why I wasn't surprised when I found out Emma is John's daughter? Ah! Emily looked startled. Before she could speak, a new person entered the room. We knew from the start, 10 years ago actually. George suddenly appeared. Understandably so, as she had recently unilaterally demanded a divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. I was shocked when you mentioned divorce. Oh, and, unfortunately, you're not divorced yet. The divorce papers are still here. Didn't you notice? What? I figured it wasn't in Emily and John's nature to confirm things. But I couldn't help but be stunned that Emily, despite the 100-day waiting period for women to remarry, hadn't noticed for months. So, Emily is still my wife, and Emma is still my daughter. Well, since there won't be a wife, though. Wait, what do you mean? A 15-year-old can choose their parent. That's not true. Emma wants to be with Mom, right? Emily said that and looked at Emma. Emma frowned at Emily and held my hand. Emily was speechless at that and glared at me. Then John suddenly burst into laughter. So that's what it is. You two are together, huh? But too bad. Isn't it impossible to live on George's salary alone? Can you stop making weird assumptions? Also, it seems George earns double the amount you think. Emily knows about it, huh? It's probably a bluff. A lol. Besides, it's impossible for you to work while dealing with your illness. You'll just die miserably somewhere. This time, I laughed at John's huge misunderstanding. John, seeing me suddenly start laughing, was getting frustrated. You didn't know about my income, did you, huh? It's probably just a bit more than a part-time job. No, it's different. My annual income is $500,000, huh? John's eyes and mouth were wide open in shock. Emily was also stunned. In fact, over the past 10 years, I had become a popular children's book author, and my income had skyrocketed from essays, interviews, and the like. Moreover, a film adaptation is planned soon, so my income is skyrocketing. Liar. Oh, do you want to see this? I said that and showed Emily my bank account screen. It clearly showed a large amount of money being deposited every month. Emily was at a loss for words when she saw it. Sarah, let's make up, huh? What are you saying? Emily was furious at John's words. Blinded by the money, I watched them blankly and then opened my mouth. Well, if you want to get married, feel free. Oh, and I'll definitely take the compensation for damages, Sarah. Wait, Sarah. Ignoring John's words, I took Emma's hand, and after saying goodbye to my in-laws, I left their house. John originally worked at my father-in-law's company, but it was revealed that he was lying about going out for sales, and he was fired. My father-in-law planned to forcibly put him on a friend's fishing boat and work him to the bone. Working on a fishing boat was tough for an indoor-loving John, and he contacted me several times. But each time, I notified my father-in-law, and eventually, the calls stopped. Emily lost custody to George and got divorced. She seemed uninterested in John, who couldn't afford luxuries and didn't seem to chase after him. She was disowned by her family and lived alone in a rundown apartment. She hadn't worked at all since getting married, and since she had always made others do things for her, she couldn't do anything herself. And there were hardly any places that would hire her as a full-time employee. Still, she had to pay for her living expenses and child support, so she worked multiple part-time jobs and barely made ends meet. After entering high school, Emma worked hard every day to study abroad and go to a prestigious university overseas. Being originally diligent, her dream is to translate my picture books and deliver them to children all over the world, which makes me happy. As for me, my picture books are selling well, and I am receiving more and more offers for anime adaptations and merchandise. My illness is also progressing well, and although I am still hospitalized, my doctor recently told me that I might be able to leave the hospital next year. And one more thing, George and Emma come to visit me every day. Actually, George recently confessed to me with remarriage in mind. I haven't given my answer yet, but I can't help but have feelings for him. He said he wants to live together when I leave the hospital. While thinking about what to answer, I work on my picture books every day, hoping for a happy future for us. I weave stories again today. I received a call informing me about a falling accident involving my husband, Mike. Panicked, I rushed to the hospital, where the doctor conveyed that the surgery was successful, but Mike hadn't regained consciousness. The uncertainty of when or if he would wake up weighed heavily on me, and I collapsed in despair. The next day, my nephew Tyler, whom I hadn't seen in years, visited the hospital room. He handed me a letter that Mike had left with him a while back, insisting I read it alone. As I read the letter, I discovered an astonishing confession from Mike. To confirm its authenticity, I examined an unconscious Mike and found evidence supporting the letter's contents. Unbeknownst to me, Mike's secret was exposed, leading to unforeseen developments. Mike and I had married early, supported by our strong connection. As I began to enjoy my work, I expressed my desire to continue working after marriage, and we mutually agreed to support each other. Over the years, our bond remained close. Before turning 30, we both desired children, actively trying to conceive. The sudden passing of Mike's voluntarily institutionalized father, whom we had regularly visited, shocked us. Struggling with the loss, We could barely eat. Mike regretted not insisting on living together, and we wanted to repay the debt owed to his father for the support we received in the early years of our marriage. However, a complicated family dynamic unfolded after Mike's mother-in-law's death. Mike's older sister, whom we had hardly met, was more concerned about the inheritance than her grieving father and us. She demanded her share before the funeral, and to pacify her, Mike's father gave her severance money under the condition that she never contact him again. Mike and I were not informed about the sale of his parents' house, making it likely his sister didn't know about it either. Concerned about potential future troubles, we decided to contact her and distribute the assets equally to prevent disputes. The challenge, though, was the absence of a clear will from Mike's father-in-law, who had intended to meet with a lawyer before his sudden demise. Mike called his sister to inform her about their father's death and the funeral arrangements, but the conversation turned sour when she demanded her share of the inheritance without expressing any condolences. Frustrated but trying to remain calm, Mike discussed the inheritance distribution, learning about his sister's recent divorce. He was particularly concerned about his nephew, her son, but the conversation was dominated by the contentious inheritance issue. After the call, Mike was visibly upset and worried about potential disruptions at the funeral, reminiscent of his mother-in-law's funeral. I consented to remain silent as Mike wished. The days following the funeral were consumed by various procedures, and during this time, his sister called almost daily regarding the inheritance. Initially, Mike patiently explained, but gradually he started to ignore her calls, growing tired of the constant disruptions. Eventually, he decided to meet her, and surprisingly, she became quite cheerful about the situation. Feeling uneasy, I wanted to accompany him, but he insisted on facing her alone. For the past 2 years, I have been involved in handling all the arrangements after the deaths of Mike's parents. Mike, however, believed it wouldn't be right to further involve me in dealing with his sister and the inheritance distribution. He assured me he could handle it and requested that I not worry. Trusting his judgment, I decided to wait and observe how things would unfold. Initially planning to join him, a sudden increase in work at my company made it impossible to match his schedule, and Mike ended up meeting her alone as planned. On the day of the meeting, my work was incredibly busy, and during my break, I couldn't help but worry about Mike. Trying to focus on work, I believed that no news was good news. Suddenly, my phone rang, displaying an unknown number with the hospital's name. Though hesitant, I answered, and the nurse confirmed the hospital's name. Learning about Mike's urgent situation, I left work immediately. Upon arriving, I discovered Mike undergoing emergency surgery. The nurse explained his critical condition and sought my consent for the procedure. Overwhelmed, I signed various documents, and the nurse sternly but kindly reminded me to pull myself together, emphasizing that Mike was fighting for his life. Throughout the night, I arranged for Mike's hospital stay and contacted various people. It wasn't until late at night that I could sit beside him, relieved that he was alive. Tears naturally flowed, but I held his hand tightly, hoping for his consciousness to return. However, he remained unresponsive. Around noon the next day, Mike's sister unexpectedly appeared in the room. This was the first time I had seen her since my mother-in-law's funeral. Wondering why she was there, I inquired about how she knew about this hospital. It seemed peculiar as I had not stepped out of Mike's room, making it impossible for her to spot me anywhere else. She assumed Mike was brain dead based on his unconscious state, displaying insensitivity. Despite her lack of concern for his safety or chances of recovery, she demanded compensation for her uninvited visit. To avoid causing a scene in front of Mike, I handed her money and watched her leave the room with an imposing attitude. As she left, she called her son into the room, introducing him as my nephew. Before leaving, she instructed him to look after me. The boy, hesitant at first, approached me and handed me a letter from Mike, stating that it was given without his mother's knowledge. The torn piece of paper seemed to contain an important message from Mike. I quickly perused the letter, discovering that Mike and his sister were initially scheduled to meet at a cafe. However, On the day of their meeting, she unexpectedly called him to her house. Mike, sensing something amiss, decided to document the events while remaining vigilant. The letter revealed a mysterious injury around the time of his mother's death, an incident he had treated himself without my knowledge. As I delved further into the letter, an astonishing story unfolded. During disputes over his mother's inheritance, Mike experienced an odd sensation in his leg after walking through a crowd. To his shock, he found a deep cut on his thigh and a utility knife in his pocket, its blade hidden. His sister now claimed responsibility for the injury, stating she had aimed for an artery in the crowd but failed. She even knew the exact location of the wound. Checking Mike's thigh while he was unconscious, I found the old cut, providing clear evidence of his sister's malicious intent. As anger surged within me, I redressed Mike, focusing on the letter. Mike expressed his conviction that his life was in danger, and he had written the letter hurriedly, while his sister briefly left the room during their inheritance discussion. Oddly, she insisted on having her son present during this discussion, planning to use him as bait in a tearful plea for a larger share of the inheritance. Feeling threatened, Mike had instructed his nephew to give me the letter if anything happened to him. The letter also mentioned evidence in the inner pocket of his jacket. Searching the jacket untouched since the nurse handed it to me, I found a voice recorder. The bloodstains indicated the severity of the accident, and Mike had shielded the recorder to protect the evidence at the risk of his own life. Listening to the shocking contents, I realized it was evidence that could incriminate his sister. In a state of disbelief, I immediately contacted the police. Shortly after, Mike's sister returned cheerfully, claiming satisfaction and demanding the chair I was using. As she casually touched up her makeup, I asked about the outcome of the inheritance distribution. She lied, stating Mike had agreed to give her a larger share. When questioned about the accident, she claimed ignorance. Choosing not to confront her lies immediately, I asked other questions about memories with Mike, their father, her divorce, and her current living situation. Inquiring about the restaurant meeting and subsequent events captured on the voice recorder, she soon became irritated, dismissing my involvement, declaring, "He was my father. You're just an outsider who married into the family." Despite my indirect connection to the inheritance, Mike's life-threatening accident implicated me in a profound way. I implored her to speak the truth, but she responded with visible outrage, asking if I thought she was lying. In response, I played the voice recorder that Mike had risked his life to save. The recording began with Mike expressing concerns about the difficulty of their conversation and his intention to record it as evidence. His sister immediately pressured him for a larger share of their father's inheritance. Initially reserved, she claimed she needed help raising her nephew alone. However, when Mike rejected her suggestion and demanded she ask her ex-husband for child support, her demeanor dramatically shifted. She confessed to inflicting the cut on Mike's thigh during the dispute over their mother's inheritance, admitting she thought it would increase her share. Mike cleverly changed the topic and suggested moving to a public place, inviting her to a nearby fish restaurant. However, her demeanor changed again, and she left to get ready. In that moment, Mike quickly wrote a letter to me, entrusting it to his nephew, and mentioned the voice recorder, hoping I would find it. After leaving her house for a restaurant, Mike treated his sister to lunch. Upon leaving, he suggested consulting a lawyer due to the deadlock in their discussion. When Mike said he was heading home, his sister insisted on accompanying him to the station. During their walk, she tried to dissuade him from involving a lawyer, leading to a commotion and voices calling for an ambulance. The recording stopped, possibly because of the emergency treatment. The sister-in-law initially seemed shocked, then became defiant, dismissing it as a sibling argument unrelated to the inheritance dispute. However, I pointed out that it proved Mike's fall was not an accident, but an incident. The police, who had arrived during her absence, confirmed the contents of the voice recorder. The sister-in-law gasped in disbelief, realizing she couldn't escape accountability. Plainclothes detectives, posing as visitors, blocked the entrance, leaving no easy escape route. As the reality of her actions dawned on her, Her arrogant demeanor shifted to fear. The police took her away, dismissing her attempts to deflect responsibility with nonchalant responses. I handed over the voice recorder to the lead investigator. After the sister-in-law's drama subsided, another person appeared, Mike's former brother-in-law. I had called him when contacting the police, and as the nephew saw his father, he exclaimed, "Daddy," leaping into his arms. The former brother-in-law acknowledged me with a nod, embracing his son. This was the first time I had met him since my mother-in-law's funeral. The voice recorder contained the sister-in-law's true feelings about her son, stating she never wanted a child and only gave birth out of obligation. Child care was mostly left to the former brother-in-law, and his parents had often helped. After their divorce, the former brother-in-law assumed he would easily obtain custody of their son. However, driven by a desire for child support, the sister-in-law convincingly portrayed herself as a devoted mother in one custody. Despite having never mistreated their son, her actions were revealed to be routine cruelty, such as depriving him of food and locking him in a closet. Mike's letter disclosed his determination to rescue his nephew from this situation, even at the cost of relinquishing his entire inheritance. Mike believed that offering the entire inheritance would prompt his sister-in-law, motivated by greed, to give up custody of her nephew. This decision was not only about the inheritance, but also about the welfare of his nephew. Realizing the gravity of the situation, I felt compelled to join in the determination to hold the sister-in-law accountable for her actions. The former brother-in-law, witnessing the drastic change in his son, blamed himself for the past. Despite securing a monthly visitation agreement, the sister-in-law consistently denied him access to their son, threatening to cut ties if he persisted. Regretful for not confronting her sooner, the former brother-in-law apologized to his son repeatedly. Determined to rectify the situation, he vowed to confront his sister. The sister-in-law had already been reported not only for the suspicious circumstances surrounding Mike's fall, but also for her mistreatment of the children. The youth division arrived, expressing a desire to hear from the nephew. As a guardian, my presence was required, and I accompanied them to the police station. Mike's recovery was uncertain, but the urgency of the nephew's situation took precedence. At the police station, a confrontation ensued between the former brother-in-law and the sister-in-law. In a moment of distress, she made outrageous accusations, labeling her son as a child of a demon. The police, unswayed by her claims, detained her. With the sister-in-law in custody, the focus shifted to the nephew's custody. Based on recorded statements and the nephew's account, it was decided he should stay with the former brother-in-law. Overjoyed to live with his father, the nephew was now ensured a comfortable life. After the police interrogation, I returned to the hospital, resolved to stay by Mike's side. The next morning, Mike regained consciousness. Following his request, we got the detective to come over, and Mike revealed that he was pushed from behind by his sister. Forensics confirmed her handprints on the jacket he was wearing at the time. Confronted with undeniable evidence, the sister-in-law was arrested. Mike demanded compensation and medical expenses from her, but her financial situation was dire. Eventually, Mike proposed splitting his father's inheritance equally, ensuring compensation and medical expenses. The sister-in-law's money dwindled as she repeatedly fired lawyers, leading to a bleak trial. The nephew's emaciated body recovered, and custody was successfully secured by the former brother-in-law. They are now living peacefully with my ex-father-in-law and his parents. After Mike's discharge, I started feeling unwell, and a checkup revealed we were expecting a new life. We hope to raise our child to always smile and be kind, believing that our happiness is just beginning.